Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Let's Dev. Now, tomorrow is America's Independence Day, a day where we remember that time the aliens blew up. Nope, wait, it's a day where we commemorate the Declaration of Independence over fireworks, hot dogs, and delicious burgers. And so to celebrate, I thought we'd make the most American thing I can think of, the AMERICANNON, a weapon that fires freedom, hamburgers, hot dogs, and fireworks. And you know me by now, each of those of course will have their own properties. So let's not waste any more time and get to the party. First, we had to set up the basics for a typical action shooter: aim direction based on mouse position, cooldown, you know the drill. The ammo variable will help us determine which projectile spawns. Speaking of which, we had to create our projectile. So creating a new object, I added a couple of arrays that will cover sprite indexes and other projectile properties. We're starting with the rocket, which comes in several lovely colors. Next, I loaded all that data in and set up a switch for projectile behavior. The firework is our basic projectile with no added features, so all we had to do was define our direction in the player code when spawning the rocket projectile. And with a couple of tweaks to the properties, we had our first projectile type finished. And while we're watching our hero in action here, I just wanted to mention that in true American fashion, our hero here should have had a different skin color each time we loaded the game. But I think I placed the randomize function in the wrong event, which explains why it never changes throughout the video. But I promise you, I spent time coding skin colors, and so I'll be sure to show it off at the end. Anyway, now that we had a base for our projectiles, we could work on some effects. I created a smoke object that would decide between two types of smoke, light and dark. The other variables added control to everything from opacity fading to movement speed, shrinkage, and other features to give our smoke puffs some variety. I then had a bunch of these puffs created around the projectile on spawn to simulate a blast effect from the cannon. And while the projectile is in motion, I had it create a smoke trail using the same puff object. Now, with some great effects accompanying our projectiles, we could start working on other projectile types, starting with the Hamburger. The Hamburger is a multi-shot shotgun style projectile, so we needed to create 3 projectiles at once in multiple directions. It took me a minute to get the math right, but it got there. And unlike the firework, we had 3 distinct sprites that needed to be drawn, which required some rewriting to the projectile code. I basically had to move the image index values to the creation event, otherwise it would get overwritten for some reason. Other than that though, our Hamburger projectile acted very similarly to the rockets, so no extra code was needed here. We could just admire the fact we fire not just a hamburger patty, but 2 buns and an assortment of toppings as well. Now, while hamburger admiration is fun and all, we still had work to do. So it was time to focus on the next projectile, hot dogs. Hot dogs are our piercing shot projectile. It shares the same behavior as the rest of our projectiles. However, what makes the hot dog special is in the details. And to work on those details, we need our enemies to exist. So I created our enemy object and gave it very basic features. It uses the same health system we've used for enemies in past projects, and its behavior is simply to move towards the player. Our main focus here is the AMERICANNON in all its glory, so simple enemies will work just fine. Now that our enemy exists, we can go back to our hot dog code. In the projectile code, we check if the projectile is a hot dog when colliding with the enemy. If the hot dog does damage to the enemy, it destroys itself and spawns a child hot dog projectile. This version of the hot dog is a simple projectile and will not splinter off like its parent. The child's hot dog is also just the hot dog wiener, which I have to say looked both awesome and hilarious, and I can't believe I've never seen it in a game before. But funny wieners aside, we had one last projectile to add: freedom. And by freedom, I mean a bald eagle that hones in on nearby enemies. Freedom works in 2 states. In the first state, it works like the rest of our projectiles by simply moving in a direction. But after half a second, Freedom finds the nearest enemy to its position and begins moving towards it. I used our special turning code here to make the movement more organic, which took some tweaking to get not only looking right, but also functionally viable. And eventually we had bald eagles being fired from cannons, which hone in on angry red blob things. And believe it or not, there's more! We're obviously missing some punch here, and I know just what we need to make things better. First, we needed screen shake. I added screen shake to our weapons anytime they were fired, and then I created an explosion object. The explosion object simply plays through an animation, which I borrowed from Nuclear Throne, and then destroys itself. This explosion is then created when an enemy dies, which also adds even more screen shake and extra puffs. Can't have too many puffs. This definitely added kick, but I thought we still lacked some flavor, so I decided to try something a little weird. I created a trail script that creates a trail object, whose sole purpose is to look pretty for a short period of time. The script creates a new trail object every few frames. These objects are visual duplicates of the projectiles spawning them, colored through the cycle of red, white, and blue, thus creating a patriotic visual trail whenever one of these glorious projectiles are fired. Okay, so it wasn't as visually awesome as I thought it'd be, but I kept it in anyway. And not only that, I jacked up the screen shake and lowered the cooldown on weapons because everything was just too subtle for what we were making. And like I said at the start, I coded a random skin color system. These skins range from light to dark tones because, you know, America. Also, the grass is totally randomly drawn too. Anyway, that is the AMERICANNON, a single weapon that randomly fires fireworks, hamburgers, hot dogs, and eagles, all of which behave in their own special ways. If there's one thing I'd have changed, I would have gone bigger with the presentation. I'm not used to coding at resolutions larger than a stamp, so I really undershot a lot of things. Regardless whether you celebrate Independence Day or not, hopefully you were able to enjoy the ridiculousness of this little project. So remember that if you like this video or enjoy Let's Dev in general, be sure to hit that like button. If you aren't already subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button and be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. And as always, be sure to leave your thoughts on our Independence Day project in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.